Alright, let's get into it, because there's a lot sitting on my desk that I haven't had the chance to bring you yet. Training camp is officially 1 week deep across the league, and instead of running my usual team-by-team breakdown, I want to slow down and talk through everything piling up behind the scenes. Some of it's about the Browns. A lot of it's about the rest of the NFL, because right now, across nearly every camp, there's a story unfolding that's impossible to ignore. And I mean that literally. There's an injury wave hitting this league right now that almost feels unnatural. But before I get into the gruesome stuff, let's start with something a little lighter, something that's been sitting in my comments for days. People keep asking me the same question over and over: who should be QB1 in Cleveland? And I went out and pulled reactions from fans, from creators, from people who are actually out there at camp watching this thing unfold in real time. And what struck me wasn't that people disagreed. It's that almost everybody landed in the same emotional place, even when their answers were different. One person told me straight up that Gabriel should be QB1, no hesitation. Another one said it's probably going to be Joe Flacco to open the season, but made it very clear that camp is exactly the kind of environment where a job can get stolen right out from under you if Shedeur puts together the right string of days. Somebody else told me they don't even care who wins the job, they just want competent quarterback play for once, because that position has been the franchise's biggest wound for years. And then there's the group, and it's a big group, that just keeps saying the same 3 words. It should be Shedeur. Not because of hype, not because of noise, but because, in their words, he's already given the city something back. He's earned a shot to return the love. Now here's where I want to pump the brakes, because I've said this before and I'll keep saying it until people hear it. The way football media talks about this stuff is not how real people talk about it. There's a massive gap between the internet's version of reality and what's actually happening on the ground, and nowhere is that more obvious than in how certain reporters talk about Shedeur's supporters. I'm not a scheme guy. I'm not pretending I can break down coverages better than the actual analysts. What I do is listen to what real people are feeling, because that's what actually drives this sport. Football isn't just X's and O's, it's entertainment, it's belief, people spending their money and time because they believe in somebody wearing that jersey. Shedeur is one of those guys. That's not nothing. And while I'm out here putting these breakdowns together, there are people physically at these practices getting us footage before anybody else. And one thing that stood out watching it all unfold is how certain reporters keep going after the so-called CU antis, like they're some imaginary boogeyman, some manufactured internet cult. They are not. I've seen the photos, I've seen the videos. These are real women showing up, cheering, loving this sport and this family's legacy. What used to be a term of affection has somehow gotten twisted into a punchline for these media guys, like it's some kind of threat. Grown men getting worked up over Twitter replies, mistaking online noise for an actual movement, while the real people showing up in person are just there to have a good time and support a young quarterback trying to make it. To every one of those women out there in Cleveland right now, I see you. Now let's talk numbers for a second, because the stat sheet doesn't lie, and it's honestly been a wild ride watching this quarterback competition swing back and forth. I want you to picture this. Denzel Boston goes up for a ball. Jerry Jeudy is right there, both hands on the football, and it still comes down as an interception. I already know some of you are going to jump into the comments defending that play, and look, nobody's saying Shedeur has been flawless through camp. Nobody's pretending this is a perfect story. But when the ball is in your hands like that, you have to bring it in. That one's on the catch, not the throw. And look, I've been giving Gabriel his flowers too, because he's earned them so far. But even his rough moments pale in comparison to what's been happening with the 10-year veteran in that quarterback room, Deshaun Watson. Gabriel throws 1 interception in a string of practices, and people act like the sky is falling. Watson has had multiple 2-interception practices, and then dropped a 3-interception clunker against the second-team defense. 3 picks against the 2s. That's not a typo. That's not a bad camera angle. That's just bad quarterback play. Plain and simple. And it's almost comedic to go back and look at some of the headlines from back in April, when reporters were confidently telling everybody that Watson had taken command of this competition. Meanwhile, 3 weeks of actual padded competitive football later, the stat sheet is telling a completely different story than the narrative some of these insiders were pushing months ago. I never bought into that story for a second. Not for 1 second. And yeah, I hear the excuse machine already revving up. It's early. It's non-padded reps. Give it time. Fine. I get it. But at some point the tape has to start mattering, and right now, the tape is not kind to Deshaun Watson. Alright, let's shift gears completely, because I need to talk about something that's honestly been dominating my timeline more than any quarterback battle this week, and that's the sheer number of significant injuries piling up across this league in just 7 days of camp. Now, I want to be fair here. Training camp injuries happen every single year. That's just the nature of padded football after an off-season of non-contact work. But this year, it genuinely feels different. It feels heavier. It feels like every single day, there's another gut punch coming out of a different building. Start in San Francisco, because the Niners have taken about as many hits as any roster in the league right now. Ricky Pearsall, the explosive Florida product, is out. George Kittle is still working back from a torn Achilles. Deshaun Shivers is banged up, though that's less concerning given his roster spot. Deshaun Shribling, a legitimate burner out of Mississippi State a lot of people were excited about, is dealing with hamstring tightness that's kept him off the field. Jordan James fractured a rib, and Christian Kirk, brought in as a steady, proven target, is banged up too. This receiver room was supposed to be must-watch this summer, and instead, it's turning into a mash unit. But if you want real heartbreak, go to Carolina, because the Panthers have had a brutal camp so far. Chris Brazell, the third-round rookie out of Tennessee, a lot of people, myself included, were excited about, is done for the season. Torn LCL, surgery required, gone before he got a real shot to show what he could do. It doesn't stop there. Nick Scorton went down. A tight end went down. Jonathan Brooks had a scary moment too, though thankfully that wasn't serious. And just when you think Carolina couldn't take another hit, Trevor Etienne gets carted off with a leg injury. Early word is it might just be a bone bruise. Nothing catastrophic, but at this point you almost have to wrap this roster in bubble wrap. If you're a Panthers fan, protect Jimmy Horn Jr. at all costs, because this roster cannot afford to lose another piece. Then there's the one that genuinely stung, Brian Breesy. If you don't know the name, this is a guy who went viral in high school for his tape, built a huge career at Clemson, and looked like a cornerstone on the interior of that Saints defensive line. Torn ACL. A season that was supposed to be a breakout year is over before it started. And it's not just the young guys either. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, a Super Bowl champion, got carted off during a Bills practice, and if you're one of the Josh Allen fans watching, that probably made your stomach drop, especially with reports he was grabbing at his Achilles. I don't have confirmation on the severity yet, so I won't speculate further. I'm just hoping it's not as bad as it looked. Now, thankfully, it's not all doom and gloom. There's actually a couple encouraging reunion storylines worth touching on. Deebo Samuel is back with San Francisco, which, given everything that roster's been through this week, is a welcome piece of stability. And that receiver room is stacked on paper. Mike Evans, Deebo, and somehow there's still an Instagram post floating around suggesting Brandon Ayuk is technically part of the mix too. From what I've seen, Deebo looks comfortable back in that number 19 jersey, and there's something poetic about him ending up right back where he started. Then there's Odell Beckham Jr., back with the Giants, and from the clips I've seen, he looks smooth. He looks fast. I caught him working alongside Malik Neighbors, still working back from injury, and the chemistry already looks promising. I'm genuinely excited to see what that connection turns into once the season starts. Let's bounce around the league a bit more. The Panthers had their live padded scrimmage open to the public, and it did not go smoothly. Jalen Coker throws an interception on what was essentially a trick play, a reverse pass attempt on second down, of all situations. Then their quarterback throws a pick that gets returned by J.C. Horn, who looked ready to take it, the distance had this been a real game. I don't know if Carolina's coaching staff has that little faith in Bryce Young that they're running wildcat concepts through a receiver, but it's a choice. And unrelated, those new Guardian caps look ridiculous. Player safety matters. Keep wearing them. Protect your head. but I'm still allowed to say they look silly. Over in Baltimore, Tyler Huntley connected with big-bodied tight end Jacoby Lane on a nice throw, and I'll admit I hadn't seen much from him since rookie minicamp, so that was a good sign heading into the joint practice stretch coming up, which is really when these storylines start to matter more. We also got a rough rep from Lamar Jackson, an interception on a throw intended for Zay Flowers that just didn't connect the way he wanted. But right alongside that mistake, Adam Randall, the former Clemson wideout, hauled in a well-designed screen and looked genuinely explosive doing it. And then, because Lamar is still Lamar, he threaded a deep ball between 3 defenders that made me want to stop everything and just admire it for a second, finding Zay Flowers in a window that most quarterbacks wouldn't even attempt to throw into. That's the kind of rep that reminds you why this league still gets excited about him every single year. I also want to check in on a few quarterbacks outside our usual coverage, because I think context matters here. Through 3 days of Eagles camp, Jalen Hurts hasn't thrown a touchdown, but he also hasn't thrown a single interception. And honestly, that mirrors exactly what I said early in Browns camp when people were panicking that Shedeur hadn't found the end zone yet. Touchdowns in camp are situational and largely meaningless in isolation. What actually matters is whether you're winning the rep. Did the ball hit the ground in 7-on-7? Did your red zone possessions consistently end in scores? Did you move the offense efficiently during 11-on-11 work? Did you manage the 2-minute drill the right way? Understanding that sometimes throwing the ball away is the smart, disciplined choice, not a failure. Counting raw completions and interceptions in August tells you almost nothing on its own. Even Patrick Mahomes had a tipped interception this week that, frankly, Travis Kelce probably should have hauled in himself. It was a touch overthrown, sure, but that ball's usually money in Kelce's hands, and it wasn't this time. My point is, if we're going to sit here nitpicking every incompletion from every quarterback in the league right now, we're going to drive ourselves crazy and miss the bigger picture entirely. Shifting over to Tennessee now, because I've made no secret of how much I like this roster. I'm a big Cam Ward guy, obviously, but I also really like a handful of the pieces they've built around him. Gunnar Helm looks like a nice complementary piece, and Anthony Hill Jr., the former Longhorn linebacker, might be the most instinctive, rangy defender they've added in a long time. Unless there's a veteran in that linebacker room I'm just not giving enough credit to, I think Hill is an immediate green dot, defensive quarterback type player for this defense. That's the kind of impact rookie signing that can quietly change a defense's entire identity. And then there's Will Levis, who gave one of the more unforgettable soundbites of camp so far. He was asked point blank whether he believes he's a franchise starter in this league, and without blinking, he said there are not 32 quarterbacks better than him. Not 31. Not a hedge. A flat statement that he belongs in the upper tier of this league. Now, I want you to sit with that for a second, because Will Levis has become something of a meme at this point, known more for wild, improbable interceptions than for winning football. So I'll leave that one for you to debate. Are there 32 quarterbacks in this league better than Will Levis? I have my opinion. I'm curious what yours is. Before I wrap this one up, I also want to shout out a few throwback names because I think it's important we don't forget the guys who built this league into what it is. Odell Beckham and Deebo Samuel are my throwback players this week, mostly because, let's be honest, both of their careers are heading toward the twilight now, whether we want to admit it or not. I also wanted to mention DeAndre Hopkins, who just got hired onto the coaching staff at Georgia Tech, which honestly caught me off guard. Wasn't expecting that move, but I respect it. Guys like that shaped how an entire generation watches this sport, and it's worth taking a second to appreciate them while they're still around it in some form. Now, quickly, before I let you go, I want to talk about something that always comes up this time of year, and that's the training camp fight. If you've never actually played organized football, let me pull back the curtain a little, because it's not always what it looks like on camera. A good chunk of these skirmishes, not all of them, but a good chunk, are basically manufactured. Coaches will pull a team aside mid-practice, especially deep into a long, monotonous stretch of camp, where guys are just grinding through install periods, and essentially challenge the group to show some fire. They're not saying it outright, but everybody in that huddle knows exactly what's being asked of them. And look, football at its core is a violent, physical sport. It's not touch football. There's a real question buried in every one of those moments. Are you willing to get hit? And are you willing to hit back? Now some guys take it too far, ripping helmets off, crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed, and that stuff deserves scrutiny. But the standard shoving match, the helmet smacking, the lineman getting chippy after getting bumped, that's mostly just controlled aggression, guys reminding each other and their coaches that they've still got some fight left in them, even in the dog days of a long camp. Last thing before I go, I want to admit when I've been wrong because that matters to me. I put out a video a while back expressing real concern about the Drake May and A.J. Brown connection in New England, and I have to say, based on what I've seen through the first week of camp, those concerns look unfounded so far. There's obviously still a massive shadow hanging over that franchise off the field, and everybody knows what that's referring to. But on the field, if this duo keeps building the kind of chemistry we've seen through camp, that's going to be one of the more dangerous passing connections to watch heading into the season. May looks comfortable. Brown looks comfortable. And when both of those things are true early in camp, that usually translates into real production once the games start counting. That's everything I've got for you today. A lot happened this week that doesn't always make it into the daily breakdowns, so I wanted to take the time to lay it all out properly. There's a lot more camp left to go, a lot more storylines developing by the day across this league, and I'll keep bringing you every piece of it as it unfolds. Take care of yourselves, and I'll catch you next time.